So this morning, I'd like to read an account of an accidental miracle that happened when Jesus was on his way to actually help someone whose daughter was dying. This is not planned, it was not staged, it was a moment in time that literally took a moment, but it resulted in a miracle. And I would like to read it to you this morning, and it's out of Mark chapter 5, verses 24 to 34. So, in Mark. So here goes. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she'd suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she'd spent everything she had to pay for them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. And immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" Could you imagine that for a moment, getting busted by Jesus? I mean, it's a crowd. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in this room. And this woman, after 12 years of what in the Greek implies menstrual bleeding, 12 years of getting worse and worse with no cure, she says, I'm going to just have a sneaky little plan. I'm not going to touch him, but I'm going to touch the hem. And if I touch the hem, nobody will know. And so she sneaks up in the crowd, and something happened in this moment. Something happened that no MRI, no CAT scan, no X-ray, no ultrasound could pick up. There was some kind of divine exchange. And Jesus stops in this crowd on his way to heal somebody's daughter and says, "Who touched me?" Could you imagine the terror in her, the fear in her? 12 years she's been on her own, isolated, and now she's caught out in the crowd. His disciples said to him, "Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? What the heck?" It doesn't say that, but I added that. But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. And then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." Those words of Jesus, "Go in peace. Your suffering is over." I want to put up on the screen a picture that hangs in our house, and it's a Ken, it's going over here. It's a Ken Duncan photo that hangs up in our home, and it's called Forgiveness. And this picture is just so beautiful. The idea of Jesus reaching down to people who felt lower than the dirt, people who were unclean, people who were isolated, people who felt very forgotten in a crowd. And he reaches out, and he doesn't just touch them, doesn't just give them a like, or a awesome in Insta, but he reaches out and he touches this woman. Let's think about this woman. That's not necessarily her, but I want that picture up for a moment. Let's get in the dirt for a moment with this woman. What was her life really like? For 12 years, she was sick and she was broke and she was at her end. According to Old Testament tradition, she was ceremonially unclean. In Leviticus 15, verse 25 to 27, talks about what happens if a woman is bleeding. There are all kinds of rules and regulations, which meant that she was now isolated and excluded. It meant she couldn't go to the synagogue, for everything that happened in the synagogue, whether that was religious meetings or festivals or weddings or community gatherings or whatever. She couldn't go there She couldn't go to the house of God because she was unclean. She couldn't go to the marketplace. She couldn't go and buy food. She couldn't prepare food if she had a family, if she had a husband, if she had children. She couldn't do that. She couldn't give somebody money or tap a card because she was unclean and isolated. She couldn't sit on a chair that you and I would sit on because she was unclean. She had to sit in her own chair. And if any of her family sat in her chair, they were now ceremonially unclean and had to go through a whole purification process. That meant she couldn't kiss or cuddle if she had a husband or kids or family members. She has no affection because she was unclean. And yet here is this woman, desperate for a miracle, excluded, alone, and living on the margins of society. And something in her says, if I can just reach out and touch the hem of his garment. And Jesus here isn't saying, have faith in faith. He's saying, put your faith in me. And that's exactly what she did. And that's exactly what he saw, is a woman who was defying all the rules, a woman who was defying societal customs to reach out and touch a rabbi as an unclean woman. So here's my question for you. What was the greater miracle? Was it that bleeding stopped? Or was it Jesus stopped and was willing to get deeply involved in her world? And not just her physical suffering, but all of her human suffering. And in a moment, with that power exchange, that healing exchange, he didn't just go, Shazam, good vibes, you're healed. He stopped and he said this to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, your suffering is over. She touched the hem, not him. But he gave her the gift of his presence and called her daughter. The least, the most marginalized, the most pushed on the edge of society, in front of a whole crowd, gets referred to as daughter, which means my descendant. In a moment, with one word, she is restored in dignity, in value, in worth. And by the way, accidentally just gets up without her issue and can get back to life, just like you and I want. I've been coming to our church in 2 weeks' time for 42 years. And there's one thing I know, and a lot of others have too, by the way. There's one thing I do know about you and me when we come to church. We all come with this deep desire, this question on the inside. Do I belong? Am I enough? Am I wanted? Just for me. Not what I can offer, not what I can do, not what I can give, not maybe the contacts that you have or the business opportunities, just for me. Am I too much? Do I have to tone me back? Am I enough? I want to say, yeah, you're perfect. You're enough. So I've called this message this morning, the gift of presence. The gift of presence. Here's Jesus on his way to do something absolutely different to this moment. This moment takes minutes. Who knows how long it was there for? Who knows how long it really took? But in this encounter, Jesus shows us the gift of his presence and then declares that her suffering is now over. Can you say amen? I think that's a word for some people here today, that your suffering is over. May it be, especially if you've got anything chronic and long-term. May the suffering be over. Don't give up. So we've got to ask ourselves the question. I'm going to unpack this morning for you in the next few moments we have. What is presence? What is presence? The gift of presence. Jesus did more than touch her and God bless you and heal you and off you go. You know, do a little post, a little shout out on Instagram at doing the Father's business would be awesome. You know, you look on Insta now and people preaching, like reposting everybody's comments about how awesome they are. It's so funny, the world we live in. What is presence? What is presence? The Oxford Dictionary says that presence is the state of being somewhere or here with you. And you and I are part of a generation where we're really struggling learning to be still, learning to switch off, Learning to dial things down, learning to be quiet, it's now become a rare commodity. Anybody agree, or is it just me? It's hard to dial things down, isn't it? Presence is vastly disappearing in our hyper-connected, continually stimulated and entertained world.